Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
Good evening to you, everyone. I'm Sandra Ali, live in the Local 4 newsroom. We are following breaking news from downtown Detroit, where police are starting to enforce that overnight curfew, which was supposed to start at 8 o'clock tonight until 5 in the morning. Let's go ahead and go live to Larry Spruill right now, who's at DPD headquarters. And Larry,
so hey guys, so things just really are getting pretty chaotic right now. As you can see behind me, DPD, they are marching in. They are already employing tear gas. Keep in mind that, Joel, be careful. So they are throwing tear gas right now at the protesters. The 8 o'clock curfew is in effect for right now. So they're trying to get people to leave. And so that's what this is all about. The protesters, they were right across the street. They were not leaving. So that's, Joel, be careful right there, Joel. So yeah, guys, so things really just took off. It was very peaceful up until a couple of minutes ago. They asked the protesters to leave several times. It is 8 o'clock. The curfew is in effect right now. The protesters would not leave, so that's why they had to throw out the tear gas. As you can see, DPD, they had their gear. The SWAT truck is driving by at this very moment. They're continuing to throw tear gas out to have the crowd leave. The crowd would not leave, although the curfew is in effect right now. We are staying back as far as we can because we don't want to become or get involved in what they're trying to do. They do know that the media is out here, but yeah, Joe, if you can turn around, protesters, they're still out here. They're still watching this in play. We can turn back around here, Joel. More tear gas was just deployed over there. More officers are right over there. They were just simply asking the protesters to leave numerous times. We heard it on the loudspeaker. They said it's 8 o'clock. The curfew is in effect. We're asking you guys to leave. The protesters did not leave. They simply stood there. That's when DPD says they were forced to take action. And so that's what they're doing right now. My colleague, Victor Williams, he is on the other side of DPD. We're going to toss things to him. Victor?
Yeah, that's right. You know, you were just saying this. They were asking them to leave. It looked like the officers were trying to be as lenient as possible before doing this. But now it is 8:43. And as a result of these people not leaving, this is the case. The tear gas is so bad. My eyes are starting to tear up at the time. But yeah, we are out here. Chief James Craig is also here as well. Lots of people. Everyone is just out here trying to get everything together as this chaos just ensues. But the smoke and the tear gas has been deployed once again. And now this looks very different from the way it looked before. Now, just a few minutes, we had hundreds and hundreds of officers, hundreds and hundreds of protesters all out here standing on the front lines with all the officers that were standing in a line. They were ready to go. And once again, they were trying to be as lenient as possible, but they couldn't do it any longer. So this is now the result. As you guys can see, there is one person or two people, three people, multiple people I'm looking at now that are being arrested. They're being taken into custody. And so this is going to be the result. They asked them to leave multiple times. I can't stress that enough. And they really tried. There was even one point where the protesters were trying to get the officers to kneel. One officer kneeled, but he said that the rest of the officers that were standing in that line, they could not because they didn't want to be in a vulnerable state. And this is what has happened, guys. So we're just going to see how this plays out. I'm seeing more and more people walking this way towards the paddy wagons after being arrested. So this is one of those things that we're just going to have to monitor and stand by and watch to see what happens. But the crowd is dispersed. As you can see, there's belongings out here in the street, trash, skateboards, everything that these protesters were holding, all their signs. It's all now just left here. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and toss it back to you in the studio. Victor Williams here, Local 4, back to you.
And Victor, real quick before I let you go, I know you're now at a safe distance there away. Can you give me an idea of the size of the crowd? I mean, because we were back here in the newsroom watching right at 8 o'clock, obviously when the curfew, was first put in place. And the crowd to us back here seemed massive, but you're there on the ground. Can you describe for me how big the crowd was?
It was huge. We're talking about thousands of people who are out here. Look at this really quickly. They're loading these folks into a bus. This was a bus that they had just here on the side. ready for this to happen. They're loading all of the people, I guess, who have been arrested. They're now loading them into that bus, and they're going to be taken away. But we were talking about thousands of people, and probably around 8:30, that crowd started to disperse just a little bit. But these were people saying that they were not going to back down. They all started to link arms, and they were just ready for whatever happened. And this is the result.
And I know we're seeing multiple arrests there behind you. We saw them as well behind Larry. It did seem pretty peaceful for about a half an hour or so, from about 8 until about 8:35, and then it seemed to kind of pick up a little bit. Did you get that sense there on the ground?
Yep, that's exactly what it was. It was even, a point, like I said before, an officer, he kneeled, and he said that he was with the people, but he said this wasn't the way to do it. And so I guess after that, tension started to flare a little bit. People started to throw water bottles actually at the group of officers that were lined up. And then I guess the officers, they just couldn't take it anymore, and this is what happened.
All right, Victor, we're going to go ahead and give you a minute there to catch your breath and regroup. Let's go ahead and check back in with Larry Spruill. Larry, I know you're not far from where Victor is. Give me an idea of what's happening there behind you.
Yes, Sandra. So we are probably about a mile away from DPD. DPD is right over there. As you can see, police officers are just monitoring and just standing there at that intersection. But I do want to show you how the crowd has dispersed. They are walking around downtown Detroit right now. We are by the Reserve Building right now. So they're marching down Michigan Avenue. But like I said, DPD they used that tear gas to make the crowd go away because the crowd was not going anywhere. There are several helicopters in the air. By my photographer Joel can just point up. Joel, there's one right over there, and then there's another helicopter right over there as well. But the crowd simply said they were not going anywhere. Although the 8 o'clock city curfew is in effect, they simply would not leave. DPD kept asking them, you have to leave, you have to leave, you have to leave. The crowd just simply said no. So that's when they deployed the tear gas, and that's when the crowd began to leave. But it was really sad, Sandra, is that this was a peaceful protest all day. They started around 4 o'clock. We marched all throughout downtown Detroit. We marched over there by Comerica Park, by Little Caesars Arena. Very peaceful, no incidents whatsoever. It was not until about 10 minutes ago when all of this just really went down the drain. So a very frustrating moment right now, Sandra, if I could be honest with you, because they were marching for a purpose. They were marching for a reason. All of that seems to be washed away because they simply would not obey the 8 o'clock curfew. And it's just really, it's just frustrating, to be honest with you, Sandra.
And Larry, I know that it looked like from what I could see here, you were pretty close to the lawn area where they were gathered right after 8 o'clock. Were they trying at
yes,
one point?
So we were right at the lawn in front of DPD. DPD officers asked us numerous times to move back because they did not know how the crowd was going to react. They didn't know which direction the crowd was going to go into, and so we kind of held our distance back, Sandra, to make sure that we were not a part of the story, to say. So we wanted to make sure that we were also safe as well, because they just did not know how the crowd was going to react once that 8 o'clock time frame came about. Once 8 o'clock came, the curfew started. They realized that the crowd was getting a little irritated. They were not going to leave anytime soon. And so that's why they had to take necessary actions.
All right. Larry, thank you so much. We're going to have you stand by here for a moment, and we're going to go ahead and check back in with Victor. Victor, I wanted to ask you, you were pretty close as well at that time. Can you tell me a little bit about that interaction back and forth? Were they trying to get police to kneel with them at one point? Could you hear that?
Yeah, I could hear them, take a kneel, take a kneel. That's all they wanted the officers to do, and the officers could not do that. One officer did decide to take a kneel, but the other officers could not because they did not want to be in a vulnerable state and let something happen. But since that has happened, we've seen just more and more waves of officers coming around, even more than that were out there just on the front lines. You guys take a look back over there. That's another group of officers. They just came out of nowhere. They were ready for this. That's one group right over there. If we look over to our right, we have another one on that side of the road as well. And then if we look behind us, I mean, they're all around us right here at the headquarters. Take a look right over here. These are officers. They're going over there with the SWAT trucks, and they're meaning business right now. Obviously, this was something that they had been preparing for. Obviously, it looks like this was something that they did not want to do. That's why they were giving everyone the opportunity to leave. You got to understand, 8 was the curfew time. They didn't deploy the tear gas until about 8:43. So they gave these folks 43 whole minutes to go ahead and leave, but none of them complied at all.
Right, and we should point out it's 8:52 right now, so we're 52 minutes into this curfew, and it looks like, at least from what I can see behind you, it looks like most of the crowd has gone home. Is that right, Victor? I mean, it looks like most of them
absolutely.
have dispersed.
Yes, I don't even see any protesters at all. And you can even look at the officers right now. It looks like they're all patrolling in large numbers.
Oh yeah, I can see
the protesters, they seem to be down the street. But right now in this very area, there are no protesters other than a gentleman that's over there on the ground that's yelling. So obviously, I mean, they were able to make some type of impact. But the gentleman over there, angry obviously at being arrested because of this, he said that, you know, this wasn't a crime for him to be out here in protest. A lot of them didn't even think that the curfew was at all necessary.
And we did see them also loading some protesters onto buses as well.
That's right. That's right. That bus that's right over there, if you guys take a look, the one that says not in service, that is the one that they have been loading people into. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get any closer and show you guys inside, but I've seen at least a dozen people just loaded into it. One young lady, she was screaming frantically to the top of her lungs, and she did not want this to happen, but she didn't comply at all.
All right, Victor Williams, thank you so much. We appreciate you, as well as Larry, of course, they're on the scene, keeping an eye on things for us. And of course, we're going to be keeping an eye on the situation in Detroit all evening long. We will be checking in with police, and of course, we will be bringing you updates as well. Don't be out in public or out on the streets of Detroit until 5 a.m. unless you are traveling to or from work. We're also